The Silence Between Stars. A First Contact Story. Chapter 1. The Signal. The night sky over the Atacama Desert was impossibly clear, a vast black canvas littered with sharp diamonds of starlight. The array loomed against it. 36 parabolic dishes, each tilted slightly differently, listening for whispers older than humanity itself. Dr. Alara Vance rubbed her eyes and sipped from the mug of bitter coffee that had long since gone cold. Another long, uneventful night. 22 years she had given to the search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Project. And what did she have to show for it? A few ambiguous bursts of static, a handful of hopeful headlines, and countless crushing letdowns. Her colleagues had moved on, some into private industry, others into teaching positions where they didn't have to defend what most of the world saw as a quixotic waste of time. Alara had stayed. Stubborn, her ex-husband used to say. Obsessed. Maybe both. But she couldn't let go of the conviction that someone, somewhere, was speaking, and that it was humanity's duty to listen. The data stream scrolled lazily across her monitor. The same background hiss of radiation, punctuated occasionally by familiar celestial signals. Pulsars ticking like galactic clocks. Quasars burning their violent light into the void. Nothing unexpected. Nothing new. She sighed and reached for her logbook. Then the spike appeared. At first, she thought it was interference, another blasted satellite bleeding into the feed. But the pattern repeated. Once, twice, a third time. Alara leaned forward, her pulse quickening. The numbers were unmistakable. Prime numbers climbing upward in flawless precision, then looping back again. Her throat went dry. No, it can't be. She fumbled for her comm headset. This is Dr. Vance in Array Control Unit B. I need confirmation on frequency band 7.3. Are you seeing this? A burst of static answered, followed by a voice half-drowned in surprise. Dr. Vance, we're picking it up too. Multiple dishes are confirming. It's not noise. Alara's fingers trembled against the console. Prime numbers were the universal flag of intelligence. No natural phenomenon produced them. This wasn't a pulsar, wasn't a black hole, wasn't any of the comforting phenomena she could rationalize away. Someone was calling. For an instant, the years of ridicule, the nights of loneliness, the ache of failure, all of it fell away, leaving only wonder and terror in equal measure. She whispered to no one but herself, "Oh my God, they're real." And in that silent desert, under a sky that had never looked so alive, humanity crossed a threshold it could never return from. Chapter 2. The world holds its breath. The news was never supposed to escape. Not yet. Not before the scientists could double and triple check. But in an age where every screen glowed with insatiable hunger for the extraordinary, secrets were fragile things. Within hours of Dr. Alara Vance logging the anomaly, a low-level technician had whispered to a friend, who whispered to another, until the story bled into the veins of the digital world. SETI detects possible alien transmission. The headline flashed across forums, news sites, and underground message boards. For half a day it was dismissed as another hoax, the kind that appeared once every few years and was quickly debunked. But then the leak of the raw data appeared, lines of numbers too elegant to be fabricated, too deliberate to be ignored. By morning it was everywhere. Governments scrambled to contain it, each issuing statements that contradicted the other. A malfunction, said one. Atmospheric interference, claimed another. But the numbers kept repeating, live-streamed by amateur radio astronomers who had tuned into the frequency themselves. There was no hiding it anymore. In New York, people poured into the streets, staring up at the sky as though expecting spaceships to descend at any moment. A man wept openly on the steps of St. Patrick's Cathedral, clutching a rosary so tightly it left welts on his palm. Across the ocean, in Tokyo, crowds gathered in Shinjuku, neon signs flickering against a sea of faces all tilted skyward in disbelief. The stock markets convulsed. Military analysts convened emergency councils. Entire religions fractured overnight. Some declared the signal confirmation of divine creation, while others condemned it as a demonic deception. In the chaos of it all, One unifying emotion pulsed through humanity: fear wrapped in awe. In Geneva, beneath the cold fluorescent lights of the United Earth Council's chamber, President Amina Reyes stood before a dozen cameras broadcasting live to billions. She was tall, composed, her dark hair tied back in a severe knot. Her hands, folded on the podium, did not tremble, though her heart did. Behind her, holographic screens displayed the waveforms of the transmission. Elegant, repeating, undeniable. She cleared her throat, and for a moment the entire planet seemed to hold its breath. "Citizens of Earth," she began, her voice low but steady. "Tonight, we face a truth both humbling and profound. For the first time in our history, we have received a signal deliberate, intelligent, and indisputably not of human origin." The chamber erupted in shouts, some of triumph, some of alarm, but the president continued. "We do not yet know who, or what, sent this message. We do not know their intentions. What we do know is this: we are not alone. And perhaps we never were." The words cut through every living room, every bar, every quiet household huddled around flickering screens. Some wept, some cheered, some simply sat in stunned silence. Reyes let the silence linger a moment before gesturing to the waveform behind her. "These numbers," she said, "encode not words, but coordinates. A place in our own solar system, beyond Neptune. They have invited us." Her gaze swept the chamber, then the cameras, as though daring humanity itself to look away. "We now face a choice: to answer or to remain silent, to risk the unknown or retreat into fear. Tonight, we begin the greatest conversation in human history." Far away, in the control room of the Chilean array, Alara Vance watched the broadcast replay on a muted monitor. The desert stretched silent outside the glass, but inside, the air buzzed with frantic energy. Journalists hammered on the locked doors. Scientists argued over every fragment of data, their voices hoarse with excitement and exhaustion. Alara sat in her chair, her face bathed in the cold light of the monitor. Coordinates, an invitation. Her lips curved into a smile, not of triumph, but of quiet, aching wonder. For so long she had begged the stars for a whisper. Now they had spoken, and the whole world was listening. Chapter 3. The Journey. The Ariadne hung in orbit like a silver spear, sunlight gleaming across her segmented hull. She wasn't built for war or colonization, but for discovery. The most advanced research vessel humanity had ever constructed. She was to carry 24 souls farther than any human had ever traveled, to a point beyond Neptune where the alien signal beckoned. Her name was chosen carefully, after the mythic guide who led Theseus through the labyrinth with nothing but a thread. Humanity, standing at the mouth of its own labyrinth, hoped this ship would lead them safely through. The crew, Dr. Alara Vance, stood at the viewport of the embarkation deck, watching the pale curve of Earth recede behind them. She had never imagined she would leave her planet, let alone at such a pivotal moment in history. Behind her, voices mingled in nervous chatter. Chief Engineer Ilias Cater, a broad-shouldered man with grease-stained hands despite the sterile environment, was recounting for the fourth time how he jury-rigged the ship's ion thrusters during a final systems test. He laughed too loud, masking his nerves with bravado. Beside him sat Captain Naomi Sato, her posture rigid, her silence commanding. She had led orbital rescue missions and deep space expeditions before, but nothing like this. Every decision she made would ripple through history. The others were scientists, linguists, diplomats, and technicians, drawn from across the globe. Each represented not only their field but also their nations, who had argued bitterly over who deserved a seat aboard. Yet now, inside the tight steel womb of the Ariadne, those politics seemed to fade, replaced by something simpler. 24 human beings staring into the dark together. Crossing the gulf. Days bled into weeks as the Ariadne accelerated outward, past the familiar gas giants. Jupiter loomed first, its storm-scarred surface swirling like an ancient, furious eye. Then Saturn, its rings like a crown of shattered glass. Beyond Uranus and Neptune, the stars grew sharper, the sun shrinking behind them into a pale coin. The crew filled the long hours with work and routine. Alara spent much of her time buried in data, analyzing the signal, tracing its exact origin. It pulsed on the same 12-minute cycle, a steady heartbeat guiding them forward. Each repetition seemed to thrum not only in her ears but in her bones. Ilias joked that it was like a beacon leading lost children home. No one laughed, but the further they traveled, the stranger the readings became. Instruments began to flicker with anomalies. Sudden spikes in radiation, fluctuations in space-time curvature that made no scientific sense. One evening, as Alara drifted through the observation bay, she saw it. At first, she thought it was a trick of the eyes, a shimmer against the void, like heat rising from asphalt. But as the ship glided closer, the shimmer grew. It wasn't dust or gas, wasn't a nebula. It was structured. A field of light stretched across their path, translucent and shifting, like a curtain woven from auroras. Patterns rippled across its surface, fractal and hypnotic. The Ariadne's hull vibrated with a low hum. Consoles flickered. The ship's systems, for a heartbeat, seemed to lose themselves. Captain Sato's voice cut through the tension. "Report." Ilias stared at his console. His face had lost its usual grin. "Captain, we're being scanned." The words hung heavy in the cabin. No one moved. The cathedral in the void. Hours later, they emerged beyond the shimmer. And there it was, suspended in the black, larger than anything human hands could dream to build, floated a structure. It was not a ship, not a planet. It was a cathedral of geometry and light. Great arcs of luminous material curved outward, spiraling into shapes that seemed to change depending on where one looked. Towers of translucent crystal stretched into the void, glowing with an inner fire. It pulsed, faint but steady, like a living thing. "Dear God," whispered one of the diplomats, crossing himself. The coordinates matched. This was the source of the signal. For a long time, no one spoke. The vastness of it pressed into them, the knowledge that they were standing at the threshold of another civilization. Captain Sato's voice finally broke the silence. "Prepare the shuttle. We're going inside." Alara's breath caught in her throat. Her entire life had been spent listening for a whisper in the dark. Now, standing before this impossible structure, she realized the universe hadn't whispered. It had been waiting. Chapter 4. The First Meeting. The shuttle detached from the Ariadne with a soft shudder, its thrusters spitting blue flame into the void. Inside the cramped cabin, no one spoke. The only sounds were the hiss of the air recyclers and the faint click of gloved fingers tightening around harness buckles. Dr. Alara Vance sat pressed against the viewport, eyes locked on the alien structure ahead. Up close, it seemed even larger, impossibly vast, as though it could have swallowed entire cities whole. Its surface wasn't solid in any human sense. It shifted, folding into new geometries when she tried to focus on one shape too long. Captain Naomi Sato sat at the controls, her jaw tense. Beside her, Chief Engineer Ilias Cater muttered to himself as he monitored the instruments. "The readings make no sense." "No sense at all," he whispered. "There's mass here, but it's fluctuating. Like it's half in our universe, half out." "Keep your head, Ilias," Sato said firmly, though her knuckles were white on the console. The shuttle approached an opening, a vast archway, rimmed with faint light. It wasn't a door in the human sense, but space itself seemed to bend inward, inviting them. They crossed the threshold. Immediately, the stars outside vanished. The shuttle drifted into an interior so vast it might as well have been infinite. Walls, if they could be called walls, were alive with color, shifting in fluid patterns like oil on water. The light didn't come from any clear source. It seemed to breathe, pulsing in rhythm, a slow cosmic heartbeat. Alara pressed her palm to the viewport, her breath fogging the glass. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Ilias, less awed, muttered, "Beautiful isn't the word I'd use." They docked at what appeared to be a landing platform, though no human hand had built it. Smooth, translucent surfaces unfolded beneath the shuttle, as though the structure had shaped itself to welcome them. The airlock cycled. The crew, suited and armed with scanners, stepped out. Gravity felt strange here, lighter than Earth, heavier than orbit. Each step carried a faint echo, not sound but vibration running through their bones. Alara's visor display flickered with unreadable data. Oxygen levels, safe. Radiation, negligible. Atmosphere, breathable. Helmets off, Captain Sato ordered. One by one, the crew obeyed. The air was cool, faintly metallic, with a hint of ozone. It smelled like a thunderstorm before rain. And then, everything changed. Alara felt it first. A pressure at the edge of her consciousness, as if a thought not her own had brushed against her mind. She gasped, hand flying to her helmet. I felt something, she stammered. Before anyone could respond, the air rippled. A shape unfolded in the space ahead. It did not walk. It did not fly. It emerged, towering, translucent. Its body was neither flesh nor machine but something in between. Sculpted geometry and flowing light, shifting as though it existed in more dimensions than they could perceive. It radiated presence, not just seen but felt, vibrating in the marrow of their bones. The crew froze. Some raised scanners, others weapons, but Alara could not move. Then, without sound, a voice entered her mind. Not words, but meaning clear as thought. You have crossed the silence. Every crew member stiffened. The words had come not through ears, but directly into their consciousness, each hearing it in their own native language. The being's form pulsed with a faint glow as it continued. You are the first of your kind. Alara's knees nearly buckled. She forced herself to step forward, her voice trembling as she whispered aloud, though she knew it didn't need sound. Who are you? The light shape shifted, its body refracting into prisms of impossible color. We are Anheener. A name is but a shadow of true being. But it will serve. Captain Sato swallowed hard, her discipline faltering for the first time. What do you want with us? The being's reply came, slow and resonant. To know you, to weigh you, to decide. The word decide hung heavy in the air, more chilling than any weapon. For the first time, Alara realized, this was not just contact. This was a test. Chapter 5. The Truth of the Stars. The crew stood in a ragged line, their faces pale in the shifting glow. No one spoke, not even the usually irrepressible Ilias. The being Anheener towered before them, its body a lattice of flowing geometry, its limbs elongating and collapsing as though it hadn't chosen a single shape to wear. Alara felt her pulse racing in her throat. Her entire career had been about listening for this moment, but she hadn't imagined what it would feel like to be seen by something so utterly inhuman. Finally, she found her voice. Why us? Why now? The question trembled in the air, fragile, human. Anheener's light deepened into hues of indigo and silver, rippling outward like the surface of disturbed water. The meaning arrived not as words but as a resonance in their minds. Each syllable felt more than heard. Because your species has reached the edge of choice. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Alara swallowed, but the being continued, its presence tightening around them. You consume your world, tearing soil and air. You divide yourselves into many fragments, each grasping for dominion. Yet you look outward with longing. You stand at the threshold where civilizations must decide, ascend or vanish. The words struck like blows. One of the diplomats, a man from Brazil named Enrique Duarte, shook his head violently. That's not true. We've come together for this mission. Humanity is changing. Anheener's form pulsed once, sharply. Unity born of fear is fragile. The pattern of your history is clear. War, greed, extinction shadows your path. Duarte fell silent. Alara forced herself to step forward, ignoring the terror clawing in her chest. You speak as if this has happened before. To others. The being shifted, its form refracting into countless mirrored silhouettes, as though it contained echoes of itself across time. We have walked the silence for eons. Many rise, few endure. Most extinguish themselves before they can touch the stars. You are fragile, but you are heard. The crew's breath caught as the walls around them flickered, and suddenly they were no longer standing inside a chamber but staring into a vision. The air dissolved into a cascade of light. Stars spread around them, not painted on walls but real, suspended in a void that felt infinite. Nebulae burned in luminous clouds, galaxies wheeled in graceful spirals. Among them, images flickered, glimpses of worlds not their own. A civilization of crystalline beings building towers that pierced clouds of methane. Another of serpentine creatures weaving cities beneath oceans of silver. And others, so many others, each rising, shimmering brightly, and then fading into silence. Elara gasped, clutching her chest. She could feel the loss in each vision, as though entire histories had been compressed into a sigh. And Heener's voice swelled, the chamber itself trembling with it. You are not the first to be invited. You are not the last. But your moment is now. The vision collapsed, leaving the crew shaking, their breaths ragged in the cool air. Captain Sato straightened, her voice steady though her eyes burned with unease. You said we must choose. Choose what? And Heener's form elongated, towering higher, as though the question itself had been anticipated. Choose what you will become. The silence waits for none. To ascend is to change beyond what you now are. To refuse is to fade, as countless have before. Elara's knees felt weak. The words weren't just prophecy, they were judgment. She whispered, more to herself than to the being, "We're not ready." And Heener shifted, its light folding inward. Readiness is illusion. All choices are made in fear. The chamber fell silent. And for the first time, Elara realized that humanity's first contact was not discovery. It was trial. Chapter 6. Fear and Division. News of the encounter reached Earth before the Ariadne's crew could even process it themselves. Encrypted transmissions, meant for council channels, had leaked within hours. Footage of the cathedral structure, of the Shimmer Curtain, of the being that called itself Anheener. Once again, humanity convulsed. In New Delhi, tens of thousands flooded the streets chanting prayers, pressing their foreheads to the ground as though the alien presence itself might descend upon them. In Moscow, soldiers marched in full gear across Red Square, their commanders proclaiming that Earth must prepare for defense against invasion. Across America, conspiracy networks ignited. Some insisted the whole thing was staged, a hologram designed to enforce global government control. Others screamed that the aliens were harbingers of apocalypse, that the end times had begun. Markets crashed, then rallied, then crashed again. Churches overflowed. Armories emptied. And in Geneva, the United Earth Council chamber degenerated into chaos. Representatives screamed over one another. We must secure the technology. They cannot dictate the future of humanity. What if they are playing us? Setting a trap? President Amina Reyes slammed her gavel again and again, but the din swallowed her. Even here, at the supposed heart of Earth's fragile unity, the cracks spread wide. For every voice urging cooperation, another shouted for control. Every nation wanted the alien knowledge. No one wanted to share. Aboard the Ariadne, the crew gathered in the mess hall, their faces lined with exhaustion. The recording of Anheener's words still echoed in their ears. Ascend or vanish. Chief Engineer Ilias slammed his fist on the table, rattling the utensils. It's obvious. We should take whatever they're offering. Knowledge, power, whatever it is. Do you think Earth will survive another century as we are? We're tearing ourselves apart. Enrique Duarte, the Brazilian diplomat, shot to his feet. And hand our species over to something we don't understand? They're not gods, Ilias, they're judges. For all we know, their gift is poison. The crew erupted, voices colliding. Some sided with Ilias, desperate for a way to leap beyond humanity's self-destruction. Others feared Duarte was right, that the aliens weren't saviors but manipulators. Captain Sato remained silent, letting the storm rage until finally she rose. Her voice cut clean through the shouting. Enough! The room fell still. She looked at them each in turn, her expression cold but not unkind. We cannot fracture here. Not now. Earth is already in chaos. If we do the same, then we'll prove Anhiner right before the test is even finished. Alara had been silent, sitting at the edge of the table, her hands clenched together so tightly her knuckles ached. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter than the others, but it carried. We've been asking the wrong question. The crew turned toward her. She swallowed hard, meeting their eyes. It isn't what the aliens want to give us. It's why they're giving it. Until we know that, every choice we make is blind. A hush followed. Even Ilias, his jaw tight, said nothing. Later, alone in her quarters, Alara stared at the stars through the viewport. The earth was a pale dot now, too far to see its turmoil, but she could feel it. Billions of voices screaming at once. Her comm tablet flickered with updates. Riots in Paris, armed clashes in Johannesburg, mass suicides in Sao Paulo, entire congregations declaring they would reject the alien, false gods. The world she had known was unraveling under the weight of knowledge it had demanded for centuries. She pressed her forehead to the glass, whispering, "Please, don't let us fail." And somewhere in the ship's core, the alien signal pulsed again, steady and patient, as though waiting for humanity to answer. Chapter 7. The Gift. The chamber pulsed with light as the crew gathered once more before Anhiner. The alien's form shifted in towering arcs, folding and unfolding like a being carved from prisms. Though its body never touched them, the pressure of its presence filled the air, as though the atmosphere itself bent around it. No one dared to speak first. At last, Anhiner extended something. It was not an object in the human sense, but a structure of light, fractal and infinitely complex, suspended in the air like a crystal grown from impossible mathematics. It rotated slowly, each angle revealing shapes that had not existed in the previous moment. The crew's scanners whirred and clicked but could not capture it. Every attempt to map the structure collapsed under paradox. This is a seed. Anhiner's voice pressed into their minds. Compressed knowledge. To unfold it is to change yourselves. It will end hunger, war, distance. But it will strip away what you are now. The crew stared, transfixed. The seed pulsed once, as though alive, then went still. Duarte was the first to speak. His voice cracked, caught between fear and fury. This is a trap. You heard them. They want to change us. Strip us of our humanity. Maybe that's their way of conquering us. Turn us into something that isn't even human anymore. Ilias stepped forward, eyes burning with hunger. And maybe it's salvation. Do you think we can survive another century as we are? You've seen Earth, riots, collapse, war already brewing. This is a chance to leap beyond it all. To fix everything. And pay what price? Duarte spat. Our souls. It's knowledge, Duarte, not damnation. Ilias snapped. The crew fractured again, voices rising. Some echoing Ilias's desperation, others Duarte's fear. The mess hall's arguments had returned, sharper and louder now that the alien gift hung before them. Captain Sato's command voice cut across the noise. Enough! Her face was pale but her eyes burned with steel. This is no ordinary choice. This isn't whether we accept a treaty, or share a resource, or sign an alliance. This is about what humanity will become. She looked at Alara. Doctor, you've studied the signal longer than any of us. What's your judgment? The weight of every gaze pressed onto her shoulders. Her throat was dry, her heart hammering so loudly she feared the alien might hear it. Alara stepped closer to the seed. Its light refracted across her skin, scattering rainbows across her face. For an instant she felt as though the thing was looking back at her. Not with eyes, but with awareness. She thought of the visions. Civilizations that had risen and fallen, burning bright before the silence claimed them. She thought of Earth's headlines, chaos blooming like fire across her home world. And she thought of her own life, decades of listening to a sky that never answered, only to now stand in a place that humans were never meant to reach. She drew a shuddering breath. If we take this seed blindly, we might solve every problem we've ever faced. Hunger, war, disease are gone. But what would we be without them? Our art, our stories, our struggles, our humanity come from imperfection. If we lose that, we might lose ourselves. She looked back at her crewmates, her voice trembling but firm. But if we reject it, if we turn away, we might never survive long enough to meet them again. Silence followed, thick and heavy. Alara turned back to the alien, raising her chin. Don't tell us what to become. Teach us how to choose. For a long moment, Anhiner was still. His body dimmed, contracting into something smaller, more focused. Then a ripple of light ran through its form, spreading outward in concentric waves, as though the chamber itself were breathing. Then you begin to understand. The seed pulsed once, brighter than before, and then its light folded in upon itself, compressing until it became a small crystalline shard, no larger than a child's hand. It drifted downward, settling gently into Alara's open palm. It was cool to the touch, but she felt power humming within it. Immense, patient, restrained. Take this, Anhiner intoned. It is locked. It will remain so until your kind achieves unity, not born of fear, but of choice. Only then will it open. Alara's breath caught. She tightened her fingers around the shard, feeling its impossible weight. Anhiner's form expanded once more, towering and resplendent, filling the chamber with shimmering light. We will not decide for you, but know this, the silence watches. It always watches. And then the being receded, dissolving back into the shifting auroras of the cathedral walls, leaving only the crew, the shard, and the unbearable weight of choice. Chapter 8. The Choice. The chamber was quiet now, the alien presence gone, though its absence felt as tangible as its arrival had. The crystalline shard rested in Alara's palm, faintly glowing with its own inner light. 23 pairs of eyes fixed on it, each gaze carrying the weight of centuries of human longing and fear. No one moved. Finally, Duarte broke the silence. So, that's it? They dangle salvation in front of us, and then tell us we can't have it until we sing Kumbaya and hold hands around the fire. His bitterness drew a few nervous laughs, but no one truly smiled. Ilias leaned forward, his voice low, almost reverent. No, don't you see? This is mercy. They could have forced it on us. They could have reshaped us without asking. Instead, they're waiting, giving us the chance to prove we deserve it. Or to fail, Duarte muttered. Captain Sato's gaze lingered on the shard, her expression unreadable. Dr. Vance, you were the first to hear the signal. You've carried us this far. What do you say we do with it? The question was unfair, and Alara knew it. But she also knew no one else could answer. She closed her fingers around the shard, feeling the cold geometry hum faintly against her skin. This isn't about us. Not just us. We can't open it, not now. The choice doesn't belong to 24 people aboard a ship. It belongs to all of humanity. She met each of their eyes in turn. We bring it back. We tell them what we saw, what we heard. And then we wait. The Ariadne left the cathedral behind, engines whispering as they threaded once more through the shimmering curtain. For hours, no one spoke. The vastness of the alien structure receded into the dark, its lights fading until it was indistinguishable from the stars. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was heavy. Some of the crew gazed silently out the windows, haunted by visions of civilizations that had risen and fallen. Others sat with heads in hands, weighed down by the knowledge that they carried not a weapon, not a treasure, but a test. Alara kept the shard close. At night she would take it from its secure case and hold it in her palm, staring into its impossible depths. Sometimes she swore she could almost hear it breathing, patient, waiting. When the Ariadne finally returned to Earth orbit months later, the world was no less fractured. But it was watching. The crew descended into history books the moment their boots touched the ground. Cameras flashed, voices shouted, and governments pressed in on all sides, demanding answers, demanding control. And there, before the United Earth Council, Alara held the shard high so all could see its quiet glow. Her voice echoed through the chamber, broadcast to billions. This is not a weapon, not a cure, not a promise. It is a mirror. It will not open until we are ready. The choice is ours. All of ours. The council erupted into arguments, accusations, applause. On the streets, people screamed, prayed, danced, rioted. And above it all, the shard pulsed faintly, as though listening. Years later, children would stand on rooftops and stare at the night sky, pointing to the place beyond Neptune where the signal had led their kind. Some would see fear, others hope. The shard remained sealed, inert and patient, in a chamber of reinforced glass in Geneva. Scientists studied it day and night, but never cracked its mystery. Politicians schemed, generals plotted, philosophers argued, but still it refused to open. And somewhere, deep in the quiet between galaxies, the Anheener waited, watching, listening, for they had not given humanity an answer. They had given it a question. And in the silence between stars, the question echoed still.